Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View, and today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Cchavi Vasisht. Dr. Cchavi Vasisht, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Dr. Vasisht is Associate Fellow with Chintan Research Foundation, one of the leading Indian think tanks, and her expertise is on Myanmar, South Asia. So we are going to talk about Myanmar. We had earlier done a brilliant podcast with her on Myanmar. So, Dr. Vasisht, I just want your viewpoint on there have been some recent developments where some Ukrainian nationals and an American also. So they were arrested by the NIA, basically, the National Investigation Agency. So, what exactly, and the issue of Myanmar came into picture. It was reported that these foreign nationals, so they were making, excursions into Myanmar and coming back. So, what do you make out of it? What exactly is the episode?
Right. Thank you so much once again, sir, for inviting me for this podcast. These arrest of six Ukrainian nationals and an American citizen. This happened on March 13th. And this happened at three different airports, that is Kolkata, Delhi, and Lucknow. And they are all charged with multiple allegations or accusations, to say so, that they illegally entered Mizoram without permits. They crossed Myanmar. They trained the ethnic armed organization groups there in drone warfare, particularly. And they were using the region as a transit, that is the northeast region as the transit or the base, to smuggle weapons and assist insurgent groups. Now, with this connection, they are also, being charged under the Unlawful Activities Act, Section 18 of that act. And a matter of fact is that they will be reproduced again in the court today, as of 6th April, because the last hearing that happened on 27th March, another 10 days were given for the custody. Now, having said this into the particular context of what these arrests were, let us picture how Northeast is actually a very sensitive area of India, right? The geographical location, the narrow Siliguri corridor, the history of the insurgent activities which have been there, and most importantly, the porous frontiers that we have with Myanmar. If you see this region, it has borders sharing with five international countries. So that too porous borders, especially with Myanmar, there is no like now the work has started to fence the borders, but if we see the history of it, they have been largely porous borders. So that makes the security of the region very, very important and has presented a lot of challenges for India's security paradigm. And this standalone is not the reason. There are external factors. If we read Burton Linter's book of 1960s, since 1960s, there have been external forces who are present in the region, who are funding these activities, who are training the ethnic armed organizations, not just in India, but also in Myanmar. So that overall, a very sophisticated network of foreign operatives, they have been trying to destabilize or continue this proxy warfare in the Northeast region. And honestly, this is not the first time also that these foreign nationals have been caught. These arrests have been done in the past, and that really reaffirms the point that how the foreign nationals or the foreign operatives are running in the Northeast region and are continuing to challenge the security of India.
Dr. Vasisht, no, what exactly could be the objective behind basically such covert operation? Now, there are two things. One is causing destabilization in Northeast.
Right.
And another one, does these operations are also kind of shaping the conflict in Myanmar also? Because we know there is a kind of a massive civil strife which is going on. And there are armed groups, there are ethnic groups. China is into play. USA is already into play. A lot of other countries are also basically, eyeing Myanmar. We had discussed this in the last podcast. We'll share the link of that podcast also if you want to understand the landscape of the political landscape or the ethnic landscape of Myanmar. So, how much was of this covert operation or similar covert operations? So, are they also trying to influence basically what is happening in Myanmar, or is it only Northeast?
Honestly, there is no straightforward objective or a defined objective. It is very multi-layered. At the immediate tactical level, if I have to say, these weapons or drones were to be supplied to the Chin forces because they had launched Mission Jerusalem in 2024, and they're already leading an offensive against the Myanmar military. At the operational level, you see that how these drone technology is now being exported. See, in Ukraine, this technology has given them benefits. They have fought Russia's war for more than 3 years now. So they have seen the benefits there, and they're using the same thing in Myanmar. If you see vis-a-vis Russian jets and Chinese jets, the military has been challenged through the drone warfare of these ethnic armed groups. So it is very important factor in the present warfare that is happening in Myanmar and the region. But at the strategic level, if we see the the geopolitics around it, this is very important. It is a very geopolitically charged picture where we see that the Indian territory is now being used, or I would say has always been used, but now more predominantly is being used to make changes or to impact or support the civil war. Now Myanmar also is undergoing a lot of political transition. We had discussed this last time, and let me just reiterate the point that this was so much quiet, certain and expected that Minong Liang would in the coming times leave the uniform and come in the civilian government, and now he has been elected as the president. But this, if we see the developments in Myanmar, it is only the central region of Myanmar or the urban areas of Myanmar which are little stabilized or in control of the military. The bordering regions for China, for India, for Thailand, they are all under conflict right now. And these, especially in the Indian side of the borders, the western side of Myanmar, that has been under the most conflict, whether it is Sagain, whether it is Chin, whether it is the Rakhine. These are the areas that have challenged the military the strongest. And therefore, the support also from the outside forces have been there to these regions. And through the Indian northeastern states, that is Manipur, Mizoram, they have been used and deployed in this manner.
Take this question a little further. So, if we talk about, because there have been discussions on, the role of groups like United Liberation Front of Assam, ULFA, and other Northeast insurgent outfits. We have seen during the recent, conflict situation in Manipur also that uh, there were a lot of groups which were operating in Myanmar, and they were fueling this fire of conflict in Manipur. So, what is the status of the various this insurgent groups or terrorist groups in Northeast vis-a-vis Myanmar? Are they still finding a sanctuary in Myanmar? Are they operating from Myanmar? And at the at the level of the military junta. So, is there a coordination between the Indian government and them to tackle this situation? So, what exactly is basically the situation there, right?
Honestly, so as I said, the bordering areas are no more under control of the military. And all the coordinated efforts that the Indian government and the Myanmar military were undertaking since 1990s, they have a very limited success now. We have not been cooperative on that front. But if I see the cross-border covert operations or networks, they have been in existence for decades now. It is not the first time, again I'm reiterating this, that this is not the first time, but there is a history of complex networks that have operated in the country, and these current arrests have only resurfaced the issue, and the PDI is again talking about it. What has also changed, I would say, is the technology used, the technology which was involved. Earlier, there was more of arms, ammunitions that were being transferred, but now what we are seeing is the drone warfare. And this is very significant. There is a St. Joe's, I think, Brigadier Narang's monograph, which is excellent on this topic of drone warfare and how the drone warfare is being supplied to the other nations to destabilize the region. Now, coming back to the point that are these insurgent groups still operating in Myanmar? I would say, if we believe the reports, it's a definite yes. also the last year's July attacks that happened, the drone strikes that happened, that confirmed their presence in the region. Ulfa leader himself, especially in the Sagain and the Chin region, when attacks happened, the Ulfa leader themselves accepted that one of the leaders was killed, and in addition to that, I think 19 other people were killed in that strike. So Myanmar's territory has been used since decades for these insurgent activities, for destabilizing both. I would say this is not a standalone India's problem. It is a problem of the region. The Indian territory is being used to, cross over the border, fuel there, be trained there, run their covert operations there, and then again that territory being used to play the covert operations in India. So it's because of the porous border or the nature of the borders, both sides have been using their territories to destabilize the nation. So what we have to understand is that it is since even northeast area has been inflicted by the insurgent activities, and the Myanmar region, and more so since the 2021 military coup has been destabilized, those grounds provide a very fertile thing for these insurgent groups to continue with their activities, to continue with their training, to continue being supplied. And just to add one more perspective here, how are they being funded? We have to understand that the huge drug cartel that is going on in Myanmar, the MLT, the Golden Triangle, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos. There was a transnational, network report which said that this triangle is now moving towards Manipur. So what we see is that these huge drug transfers have been supplying funds to these armed groups. And there was just one seizure which showed that there were billions and billions of dollars that were involved in just one transshipment. So just understand the level of funding that is going on to fund these insurgent activities, to fund these rebel groups in terms of arms, ammunitions, and now the drone warfare, again, which is very complex. So all these points suggest to a understanding that insurgent groups in Myanmar, in India, who are operating from India and from Myanmar, as well as the ethnic armed groups in Myanmar, they are all coming down to playing a battle, a proxy battle, which is again threatening to Myanmar's extent. I would say they're fighting a civil war with the military. So their fight and justifications are different from what we understand. So continuing civil war like situation, continuing destabilized region is something which is helping them harbor their activities. Yeah.
What my last question is, so who is backing or enabling? Let's bifurcate into two, parts. One is the ethnic groups, armed groups of Myanmar, and second, the insurgent groups which are operating basically, in Northeast India and also across the border, basically anti-India, the insurgent groups. So who is backing or enabling these, especially these anti-India insurgent groups in Myanmar? Is it China? You have mentioned one source that the drug money is,
Right.
being used to finance both these set of players. So are there state actors also involved in it, like China or Pakistan or matter of fact USA? So if you can throw some light on basically, or if there are other non-state actors which are kind of basically backing them. So who are the
Hmm.
basically for whom they are basically acting as a proxy?
So again, so I would say it's a layered mix of people involved: state actors, non-state actors, even commercial networks, as we saw that the recent arrest of the American citizen. He was a commercial private military contractor. So it's a mix of all the actors. China, I definitely would like to highlight in this context, is because China has been supplying or training these groups not just in present times, but through the history, through the decades. Again, if I have to give a source or a reference, it is Burton Linter's book again, who has done extensive study in the region and has highlighted how these groups, again putting to the point how in the pre-Bangladesh, pre-Pakistan times, even Bangladesh territory, which was in the Pakistan domain, was used to train these insurgent groups to supply arms and ammunition. Again, Pakistan being another territory. Through Nepal also they tried to supply these groups some arms and ammunition. And then China, which is a major player in the region. Now, this is not just relevant for India, but also for Myanmar. China has played a very dual role. I remember this that I had discussed with you earlier also. One, it is supplying military with the arms and ammunitions. It is supplying military with the funds by taking ahead the BRI project. So one side it is secured, even if the military, is in power or is not in power, it has secured its position with the military. Second, with the ethnic armed groups, it has been continuously supplying arms and ammunition to these groups. If you remember, at the very start of 2021 military coup, some of the Chinese infrastructure was attacked, and China was very wary of it. For the first time, even protests were held in front of Chinese embassy, which never happened in the history of Myanmar. So they were very wary of it, and by I think 2022, they signed a 10-point program with NUG released this 10-point program that they will not harm any of the Chinese infrastructure and will not harm any of the Chinese people, and along with other applications for it. So what we understand is that China supplied in Myanmar also both sides and continued the civil war. A destabilized Myanmar is in a way beneficial for China, and that is how it has continued to fuel this crisis. Similarly, for India's northeast, China has continued to fuel the crisis. If I talk of the Western forces now, yes, they were involved in these activities, and it is now widely known that the mercenary activities that were taking along place in the northeast region have impacted the region's stability. So, not that the Western powers were not involved in it. It is a complex web of people, state actors, non-state actors, private contractors who are involved in this destabilization process. So for India, it has security implications, on multiple fronts. One, Northeast being used as a transit corridor, yes. By the foreign networks, yes. It is a direct sovereignty challenge, yes. Second, India's own insurgent activities are being, heightened. If we see right after the military coup in November, there was an attack on the colonel and the other people in his family. In next year, again, there were some insurgent groups. In 2023, we know that the Manipur crisis, though the genesis of those crises is internal politics, internal dynamics, but the forces, external forces had their role to play. The instability in Myanmar did have its impact on Manipur crisis. So India's own insurgent groups are very much entangled in this web of network that is there. And third, Myanmar being our eastern neighbor, anything that happens in the country, the civil war which is ongoing for the past 5 years now, and even if despite these were the managed political transition that happened in Myanmar, the civil war continues in these bordering regions. So the instability which is there in the bordering regions will continue to have its impact in the northeast. So for India, it is a complex security challenge that needs to be addressed, and we should understand that these arrests are not the first time. Second, these are matters which are very sensitive, and how these are taken forward in the media needs to be closely watched out for. These issues are much larger than what we see through our eyes. It's a very complex web of things, not a first arrest. It has a history of it that needs to be understood, and the complex network of things needs to be understood before we take this forward. Yes.
No, very well decoded, and I want to reiterate especially the point having come from the media background that the media needs to handle these kind of multi-layered issues very sensitively and not sensationalize it and not trivialize it also. I think that's very important, and unfortunately, that seems to be missing in large parts of media. But we hope that we can fill up this gap to some extent by bringing in experts like you and decoding these complex issues. And we'll continue to track this story because Northeast and Myanmar, so these are important stories which often don't find sufficient space in the so-called mainstream Indian media. And thank you so much, Dr. Vasisht, for joining us and for taking time out from your busy schedule. And we hope to host you back again soon. Thank you so much, for being
Thank
here.
you so much once again for the opportunity.